welcome to another episode of The Diplomats, brought to you by diplomacybriefing.com. And this is a very special episode of our coverage of the Nexus Season 7 finals, because we have a very special guest today. We have Spencer, or Tarsier, or Russia in this game. And welcome, sir.
Yeah, thank you. It's exciting to be with you all. I don't know if you want me to wear this, but from our Exploding Kittens game, here is my cone of shame. Wore it for about a week after I got kicked out, so there it is.
Well, I'm afraid we sadly lost you from the game in 1906, but you made it more than halfway. How you predicted that you weren't going to stay around for very long. And yeah, you 60% of the way through the game. It's okay.
Yeah, I mean, I was glad not to be the first one out.
No, you weren't.
You outlived two very, very good, skillful players and excellent relationship managers, and that's nothing to be ashamed of, man. That's a source of pride. Outliving Karthik and Jordan, that's on a board like this, that's an accomplishment. You know?
Yeah, no, it was a fun go.
And let's be clear about the scope of your accomplishment. Karthik and Jordan didn't have to deal with John, and you did. So you accomplished it.
Had to deal with John every single season.
Yeah, before we get into the moves themselves, just thinking back to the power selection in the Paris method, you were 4th seed, but you decided to drop down below Ed. You picked in 5th, and of course you picked Russia. I think your choice between Russia, Austria, and Turkey at that point. Why? Remind us why, if you can remember, indeed, because it's a while ago now, why you dropped down below Ed. Did you want to see what the West was going to be like, or were you trying to avoid certain people?
Yeah, so my long-term strategy was, if you remember in the semifinal, and it was under a different draw resolution, I think I was keeping up with, I was actually above all of the other powers, but I was setting myself up so that I would win that draw as we reverse back through the seasons. And I just felt it was unlikely, especially as Russia, that I would be a dominant factor when it came to the end of the game. So I had no strong preferences on countries. And so I felt I would just give myself one additional nudge if it came down to the point that I could hold on to draw status. And so there were then, I guess, 4 players ahead of me that if I drew with any of them, it would come out in my favor. And I don't know that I had a lot of optimism that it would have ended that way, but given the caliber of players, I really didn't feel like I would be the horse that was out of the gate running that nobody could catch up with. So it was just kind of really a knee-jerk decision to give myself a slight edge.
So you were playing the scoring system and the tournament structure, not when I take a look at what players do in the Paris method, and when you view picking your country versus dropping down, I always consider it a binary choice between, picking early allows you to pick your country, and picking late allows you to pick your neighbors. For you, it wasn't about picking your neighbor. For you, it was about the tiebreakers.
There was a little bit of picking the neighbor, but I honestly didn't know, besides Jordan, and only in a limited way I knew Jordan, and besides Greg, I really didn't know the players well enough for that to be something I could weigh too heavily on. So I wasn't familiar enough with them for that to be my dominant decision point.
Okay. All right. So that's interesting. That's enlightening for me. Thank you.
So how did you go into the start of the game, spring 1901? What were you looking to achieve? Who were you hoping to work with? Which conversations went well? What went badly?
Yeah, so all of the conversations right at the start went well, but I will say something that's true here, and it's true of every season, I think, for the rest of the game. I can blame John for some headaches that he caused. I can blame Ed for attacking me as he did. I can do all types of blaming, but in the end, even though I consider diplomacy to be maybe more of a strength for me than my tactical decisions, I never felt like I secured that that strong relationship, which I thought I had with Italy, but that strong relationship that was going to carry me to mid game. And so I felt like through most of this game, I was scrambling to get a foothold in a relationship with another player, which is sort of true of my semifinal game as well. But there it benefited me. I was able to stay under the radar. Here it came back and caused me to really start to deteriorate in mid game in a way I couldn't recover from. And so I put that on me, my inability to form that bond that I needed to carry me through. So I guess I can go right into the first season and Turkey's moves. I was a little bit wary of forming a relationship with John, both because, and maybe this is less true with higher caliber players, but people are always on guard for the juggernaut. Secondly, as you remember from his pre-game interview, which we have to take with a grain of salt, but he specifically mentioned wanting to work with me. But at the very least, what I wanted to do was start out with a show of trust. And I experimented with that approach with both John and with Karthik. So Karthik and I originally had a DMZ in Galicia, which I think he would have honored. We later mutually changed our minds there. I suggested it. And I had proposed, and I know Eric was a critic, just on face value, I am too. I proposed keeping the Black Sea demilitarized. And if you, this is a style I use a lot, which is big show of trust early on, because we can get past that. It usually gives us a bond that benefits us later in the game. You'll see that with Sabi in my semifinal game, and I allowed Sabi to go into Galicia, and that was what I felt was the first trust move that allowed me and Sabi to move the map where it needed to be, and for me to later make the stab. So here it backfired on me, and as Sabi was gloating in the comments, we tried the Armenian fist bump, and it came back to haunt me. So as I joked to Greg, I got fisted by John down in Turkey. And I did not expect the Black Sea. Now, John would disagree with this, but he really went heavy duty, just full all in on trying to gaslight me here and say that he had misunderstood what our agreement was. And that's where trust just majorly broke down with me. But all the same, it was the first season. So we worked out season 2, where he was supposed to move that fleet out of the Black Sea and into Constantinople. And as we saw, you can advance or not, but as we saw, he supports himself to Armenia. There was just no point after that I could trust John. And like I told him when he was, my move, I mean, honestly, if I have a weakness, which I'll just mention now because I'm working on it, it's a stubborn streak. That move to Romania, it was not a smart move, but it was just a clear sign to Austria that I mean him no harm, and a clear sign to Turkey that if you're going to be all in against me, I will give 100% to pushing back on you, even if it costs me the game. Because as I told John, when he was later trying to get me to allow him into Romania to pop my fleet, there were other ways we could get an army in there besides him taking Romania to pop the fleet. I said, I'm not going to let you in and then you just stay there because I'll have egg all over my face. But I said, John, give me even one season. Just point to one season where you did a move that was friendly to Russia. And the only season he would even be close to pointing to is when I was doing him the favor. He moved away from Armenia, but that was just because I was doing him the favor. And I said, I want to trust you. It would benefit both of our games, but you can't point to one time that you weren't acting in a hostile way toward Russia. So what it did for him is it stagnated him. You can now see him expanding once the other players eliminated me. What it did for me is later allowed Germany to walk all over me. And quite frankly, and I made some tactical errors. I'll own those, but I had everything down there faced off against John's continued relentless attack on me, at least from my perspective. He may have a different perspective. It may be the correct one. Maybe he did want to work with me, but that's just where I was. So,
And that's kind of a summation, Spencer, of what I said in my commentary as I was covering
right.
the game. The reason Ed was able to take advantage of you was because you didn't care.
Yeah, that's it. I was at the point where I felt that John had ruined my start. And I've got commentary on the other players, sure, but just to start out with John, it was one of those things that it was partially, Eric, it was partially not caring, but the other part of it was if I turned stuff against Ed, my full belief there was that suddenly my dots down below, Romania and Sevastopol, were going to turn yellow. And so if I've got to pick an enemy, I'm going to pick the person who started out against me and did not quit.
Okay. Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that's a good summation of my entire commentary of the eastern half of the board, the entire game.
Right.
Did you ever disagree with anything I said?
No. I mean, there were maybe some tactical analyses that you gave that I disagreed with only because I knew what was going on in the conversation. But as far as your big picture read of the map, I don't think I did.
So so you've got problems with Turkey, clearly. It looks like you've got Karthik on side here. You attack Turkey together, and it looks like you're moving in position to attack Germany together.
Yes, right.
By the way, this was the single most beautiful board-wide set of moves in the entire game. This set of orders, Spring 1902, was a work of art, and I loved it. And what Karthik did with it in fall of 02 was terribly disappointing.
Yeah.
Or you, not Karthik, you screwed it up.
I screwed it up. I agree. So this was my, you remember my comment in Discord, doesn't Russia ever get any credit? And I was annoyed with all the attention on the masterminding that Karthik supposedly did this season, but this was actually my reach out within somewhere in the 11th hour. We didn't have much time left.
With Karthik or Ed, sorry.
Ed.
The previous season, actually.
Okay.
The previous season here was my call here in the 11th hour, where I reached out to Karthik and I said, hey, are you up to this? Here are my thoughts. I said, if you move up there, I'll go after Berlin. We've really got him in a tough spot. In the meantime, Jordan was reaching out and wanting to work together. And I'm going to say, I do feel bad for some treatment I gave Jordan that's going to come in a season or so. But so this was my reach out. I was annoyed that Karthik was getting all the attention. And I think that was a theme in Discord, if you remember, that we would get caricature envy when he was shown with his flexing and all of that. So another 11th hour, if you go to the next season, another 11th hour reach out was that once I had stretched Austria out by talking him into this, then the next thing was, first off, let's move in on Austria. This is where Italy, I felt, let me down, because Italy and I had always talked about that our alliance was the true alliance down here, and we would work on Austria together. Then together we would take out Turkey. And I beautifully spread out Austria and reached out to Italy and said, hey, right now we got to make our move. Let's get in position where even if you can't take something, you can be there to start to nip him apart. Maybe we let Turkey in on the game a little bit, hence my support of Turkey into Bulgaria. And Italy started getting all wishy-washy with it. I was surprised to see him get into Greece, which I think was arranged between him and Austria. I don't know that for sure, but he was totally backing off from any kind of cooperation and telling me he had to focus everything on the possible attack from France. So I got cold feet, and I had to do an about face here, especially because I had some worry about Karthik. I will say that it wasn't so much that I was intimidated by Karthik, but I was intimidated by the reputation that all the other players were expressing about Karthik. They felt he was the one who was going to dominate. I've never played with him before. So I saw an opportunity to really cripple him here, which is why it was again in the 11th hour, I reached out to Ed. Ed had been pestering me all season, trying to get me to flip over, but I saw a really good opportunity here. I reached out to Ed and said, you've got to trust me here. Move Kiel to Munich. And he thought I was stabbing him. He felt that what we would see is my unit in Denmark. He thought he would see my unit in Berlin, but he went ahead and trusted me and moved down. I supported him and crippled Karthik to the point I thought was going to be deadly for Karthik when the others all moved in on him. As we can see, he stuck around for a little while longer and started to be used as a janissary here and there for different countries.
So this wasn't what you had in mind before the previous season when you did that move. That wasn't a setup for this.
The previous move was to send him up and I wasn't sure what I was going to do once he moved up. I had an option of him just being spread out and we take advantage of that. But I would say my primary goal at the time was to attack Germany. And in either case, I thought I had Italy on my side here, and Italy, at least in his expression, backing off from that made me reconsider the whole thing.
Well, the only thing Italy could have done here that would have been more offensive against Austria is if he'd moved Piedmont to Venice.
Yeah. I mean, it wouldn't have gotten him a unit per se, but it would have gotten one more unit in position that the next couple of seasons would have been really rough for Austria.
Well, the next couple of seasons were very rough for Austria.
It would have been, and I'll say one more thing here. I felt prior to this that Austria and Turkey were working together, so it was nice to see Austria cooperate against Turkey with me. But I knew that even if they hadn't been, it's easy to mend fences in diplomacy when it's to your advantage. I just had to thin out the East somehow. It was just such a mess down there, and it just ended up not happening and ultimately backfired against me.
So 1902 was your golden age, man. You single-handedly killed Karthik. So
yeah,
you single-handedly killed him. You got
him.
But
it was a Pyrrhic victory though, because it gave me a little boost. Probably brought a radar on my growth, which isn't substantial or out of line for Russia. But Turkey did admit to me later, as we got deeper in the game, we kind of did an early AAR with each other. And he did admit his earlier friendliness was an attempt to get me 2 builds in the first year. He was lobbying hard for Germany to let me have Sweden, which I think, obviously that convinced Germany otherwise. He wanted me to get 2 builds for the purpose, according to him, of drawing attention to me and then talk everybody into an attack on Russia. So that at least gives some insight into his allowing me into Romania in the first season.
That sounds a little bit like justification after the fact to me.
It could be. That's just what he said. Yeah.
But as far as your comment goes on it being a Pyrrhic victory, diplomacy is a drag, and sometimes a Pyrrhic victory is the only victory you get.
That's true. Yeah.
The comment you made just a couple of minutes ago about the one season where Turkey made pro-Russian moves, was it this move you were talking about? Where you helped him from Armenia into Bulgaria?
It was the only one he could argue was pro-Russian, and I would still disagree with him because this was me doing a favor for him. So I was just, my point was there's no time that Turkey did anything pro-Russia.
That wasn't pro-Russian. That wasn't pro-Russian. That was pro-Turkish.
No, I agree. I'm just saying that would be the closest he would have to cling to.
Yeah. I call BS.
Out of Armenia.
I call BS. Yeah. If you hadn't done this for him, go back a second, Wardy. If you had not done this for him, Spencer, he'd be dead and you'd still be alive.
Yeah, probably.
No good deed goes unpunished.
The only reason I would disagree with that is because I don't know Karthik well enough. And I could very much see Karthik saying, hey, I got Bulgaria. You're not going to get it back, but would you like revenge on this guy who is maybe his biggest competitor in the East? And if so, I'm happy to support you into Romania. So that would be the only reason I would disagree.
I think you would have ended up with Ankara and Smyrna.
Yeah,
I think you ended up with our.
yeah, probably so.
Yeah,
You'll never know, unfortunately.
but there probably would have been an AI. There probably would have been a lasting AI, and you might have gotten cut out anyway.
Yeah, and I think this move to Greece suggested. I don't think that was. I mean, I think that Austria offered that to him, thinking that he was growing by 2 centers, Munich and Bulgaria, and so he offered him Greece as a peace treaty to continue their good relationship.
Right.
From my conversation with Karthik, he confirmed that was the case. Yeah.
And I think we talked about that at the time, didn't we, Chris?
Yes.
Wasn't that in our assessment at the time that we figured that Greece was something that Austria agreed to?
It seems like a long time ago now. It may well have been. Although the Turkish support sort of threw some doubt in my mind. This had me scratching my head.
Every season past this will have you scratching your head. Me too. Go ahead. So
it seems like you are. So you vacate Sweden when you know Berlin is going to Baltic Sea.
Yes.
Or it's most likely going to Baltic Sea. Meanwhile, we've got Silesia going back to Galicia. So you're opening yourself up to Germany.
Right. So here's what was going on here. Eric is right, and I knew that Berlin was going to Baltic. I could have bounced it. Had I bounced it, I would have kept him out for at least 2 seasons, probably. I couldn't have grabbed Norway, because if I grabbed Norway, I guess I probably could have with Moscow. The game I was playing with Austria and Turkey down below, and added to that my suspicion, maybe conviction, that Italy and Austria were working together, was telling me I have yet to hook onto a good partner down below. And I had also played enough of a game with Austria and Turkey that they both had very strong reasons to distrust anything I would propose to them. And I needed a friend. And I could not. Jordan was growing weaker by the moment. He wasn't going to be a game-long friend, especially with that fleet in Edinburgh, right? That's German fleet already, isn't it? France was not giving me anything. France just kept talking about how we were going to work together, but would never do any kind of advancement on Germany. I think we all would agree there was probably a strong non-aggression between them since the start. So my move to Norway was with the mindset that if I engage in battle with Germany, I have one more country, 4 of them that border me, that I'm in battle with. If I move to Norway and let him have it, after having just done him this big favor, there was a chance, not necessarily an assurance, that maybe I could buy peace and cooperation with him for at least the next 3 or 4 seasons. Like, I didn't think it would be game long. So I was doing whatever I could to show Germany, hey, not only did I help you out, but I'm on board here with us working together, because there's so much growth for both of us that doesn't conflict. And it was a mistake, but it was a leap of faith, because I had to do something. I feel bad because I did take Norway after giving Jordan my word that I wasn't going to. And I was really trying to play a very honest game. I thought that would pay dividends later. I found myself in the same situation I did in the semifinals, where because I'm scrambling in certain situations, you have no choice but to be dishonest. I mean, that was at least my perspective. But I felt that was a bit of a gratuitous lie directed at Jordan just to grab Norway. I don't think he would have even tried to have bounced me. And if he did, all it would have done is kept me Sweden for another season. I would have supported myself in. There was no need to be dishonest with him. And I kind of felt bad about that the rest of the game. But it was just a trust move, trying to get Ed on my side for at least a few seasons.
Was this an agreed swap?
I have a name. I have a name for what happened to you here, Spencer. It's usually just something I keep in my head, but I call this Sunset Boulevard. Okay. And all the runaways who flock to California to pursue their dreams, they all end up on Sunset Boulevard, right?
Right.
And they're desperate and they're lonely and they're looking for a friend. And what do they find instead? They don't find a friend, they find a pimp.
Yeah.
And you got pimped.
Yeah, totally. Totally.
You got the Sunset Boulevard treatment from Ed.
Right. Right.
You needed a friend, and he knew you needed a friend, so he decided to be your pimp instead.
Yeah, and that will color the rest of the relationship with Ed. This was not a stab here. This was arranged.
Right.
After that, though, he starts to make moves that are not really explicable, except for if he's, to use the term again, gaslighting me in some way. Ed would hopefully say the same thing, that any cooperation I gave him past, like even right here, moving to Bohemia, he says it was to keep Vienna from retreating there, perhaps, but I was just, allies would at least give each other a heads up, right? So I was getting nervous.
Yeah.
And then beyond this, it gets a bit more overt, a bit more egregious. Any cooperation you saw me attempting with Ed past this point was simply because I had no other choice. He would assure me, I stabbed you before. I don't mean to do it this time. I really want to work with you. I took my pound of flesh. My response back, as he would hopefully agree, is I totally don't trust you here, but I'm so overcommitted elsewhere that it's no risk for me to just give you that support you need, or just to assume you're really not going to knock me out of here. And I'll make a comment on that with a specific season in a second or two.
So would you say my metaphor was on the money?
Yeah, definitely. I was just looking, I said it from the start. I never felt anybody that I had bonded with anyone in a way that's my regret with the game, not getting knocked out before the conclusion. But I love that part of the game, and I think we all do, where you have a solid partner and the two of you are really scheming and coming up with really clever tactics together. And that's a fun part of the game. And I think that they're in that part now, though the loyalties are a bit transient, and never got that place from me, with the exception of that one season with Karthik, and then the response to that season. That's the fun of the game for me, is that kind of really clever coordination with another player. And I kind of hoped it would come out of working with Ed, but deep down, I expressed it to them. I had no real confidence.
The only consolation I have to offer you, Spencer, is that happens to Russia all the time, especially in the modern meta.
Right.
Russia used to be more of an edge power and used to be more of a stronger power. But the way the meta has changed in our community, Russia's much more of a center power now.
Right.
And Russia frequently suffers the fate that you suffered.
Yeah, exactly. Which is fine. You just have to keep that meta in mind and try your best to counter it.
Meanwhile, this season, we have Turkey going to Armenia again.
Yes.
Was he just determined to try and attack you the whole game? Was there any attempt at reconciliation there between the two of you?
Well, so Turkey's only path forward was to pop my fleet in Romania. And I think it was the previous season. If you go back to the previous season, you see my support of Serbia back to Bulgaria. This is an interesting
genuine
season.
offer.
This is where the conversations would be super helpful. Turkey wanted to work together against Austria and to pop my fleet and get an army in place there. So he says. I didn't have confidence that would happen. Austria wanted to work together. Both of them told me their moves, and if the moves they told me were accurate, they were going to cancel each other out. And so, if such was the case, I went ahead and supported Austria there because I knew that Bulgaria would be safe based on what Turkey had told me. And
bought you some time.
What's that?
It bought you some time. You didn't have to decide.
This was a big argument that came up between me and John afterward, though, because he did a different set of moves, which is fine. People do that all the time. Except he kept insisting he did exactly what he told me, even after I quoted his moves back to him. And then finally he admitted, as he had to do earlier in the season, that again, the miscommunication had been on his end. but it was just, there was something so weird about it to me, and his denial of it, which was just seemed like such overt gaslighting. But in his defense, he sees me supporting Austria in. Even if he wanted to work with me, I don't see why he wouldn't have gone back on the attack. But I just couldn't let him. I mean, I already had enough egg on my face, or maybe other moves. I couldn't allow him into Romania when there were other less threatening ways for me to put an army into Romania. We could have worked something else out, such as I had proposed a convoy from Sevastopol into Romania and just move my fleet back up into Sev.
I think it's what Eric suggested at the time, actually, isn't it?
He was
That's
hearing
exactly what I
nothing.
suggested.
He would not have peace with me, he said, until that fleet was just gone from the map. And I was even open to that if the way we did it was to put it in one of his centers unsupported and have him pop it there. But I wasn't going to let him into Romania. He just had not earned my trust. So it just kept being a conflict between us.
Maybe it's your fault, Spencer.
It might be.
Maybe he saw how happy you were to get pimped by Ed. He figured you'd let him pimp you too.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not blaming it on him. I'm just giving the source of my stubbornness and frustration.
I just had to take a dig. That's all.
That's okay. But I mean, in this game, perception's everything, isn't it? So it could be that John's going to do an interview with you and he's going to throw this all on me. That's how it works.
That's a guarantee. That's a guarantee.
Yeah.
As I always say, watching diplomacy players do an AAR is like watching a dog go out in the backyard and take a dump and then sniff it. No one's ever going to admit that they were wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, I do. Karthik does. Riaz does.
He hated your commentary, though. He kept saying, they're all blaming this on me and I want to work with you. And I said, well, face value, it looks pretty bad for Turkey as far as who's the aggressor here.
John hated my commentary?
Yeah, he goes, it was from one of your shows, and he just said, they're blaming all of this conflict on me. And I said, well, but look at your moves. Like, if they don't see any of what you're trying to communicate, I said, but I'm not convinced by your moves either that you mean it. I really think if you get into Romania, you're staying in Romania.
Let me go ahead and make a prediction now. Hey, John, you'll continue to hate my commentary for the rest of the game.
Only the thing is, this will only air after the end of the game, so I'm sure you will have done. I suppose the one good thing here is that Baltic is in Denmark now. It went without support. I suppose it was just covering from Jordan potentially, but at least there's no German fleet in the Baltic Sea. And
that was part of the agreement, so I was feeling good about working with that at that point.
How discouraging was it for you, Spencer, to see these moves, Baltic to Denmark, Munich to Bohemia, when it was coupled with Holland to Kiel, Belgium to Holland, giving Belgium to France? Didn't that let you know, oh, I'm in deep doo-doo?
Yeah, and Germany and I talked about that. That's you did honor what you said you were going to do, but your moves don't show that there's any indication of aggression toward France, for sure. I mean, the fleet can be used against England, but we chatted about that for sure.
Things could have gone a lot differently for you here if you'd pulled one of my stunts, where if Galicia had, instead of supporting Tyrolia to Vienna, had made that real unfortunate, regrettable error, and you're so sorry. Oops, I misordered. I supported Tyrolia to Budapest by accident. Did that thought ever cross your mind?
Yeah, I swore that strategy off with both the semifinal and the final. Because in the semifinal, Goldfinger kept trying to convince me to try that tactic with one of our moves. I can't remember what it was. And it just feels, no offense, but it just felt so obvious in a high caliber game that it would seem odd we hadn't checked our moves.
No, I think you're right. I think you're right. The irony is, I usually play on my phone.
Yeah.
And Backstabber is horrible for playing on your phone with some of those small spaces.
Well,
even though sometimes I do it on purpose.
Yeah.
I usually, if I get through a game without having one accidental misorder because of my fat diabetic fingers on that little 3-inch screen, I'm usually very surprised.
Well, the further irony is if you look back at my semifinal game, I did make a misorder in fall of 01, and it cost me Greece in the first year. So, I mean, maybe believable, I guess, but it just wasn't my style this game.
Okay. But I think you might have done a lot better if you hadn't supported Ed into Vienna there.
I agree. Yep.
I don't think Bohemia would have been nice in hindsight, but
hindsight. Yeah, the whole game plan is I was going to support him in. I would be in Budapest. That was the strategy, and I think it actually turns out that way. He supports me into Budapest, but it's kind of a.
Well,
you walk in unopposed. Yeah. Well, he walks to Silesia and Galicia.
Yeah, that's well. He didn't support me, but he allowed me in because then he ramped up his attack.
But why did you go to Budapest? I mean, bearing in mind this is a spring move. Was it to pick up Budapest on the basis that you were going to keep it in fall, or was it to force something else, like bounce somebody out or try and blow up that Austrian army?
I think the question there is why do it in spring of 1904? I think that was. I mean, I guess I felt that I'd be able to defend Warsaw if they moved on it from Moscow, but. I mean, I guess I could have waited till fall. I was just so hungry for a center at that point. And maybe if I'd gone there, I don't know. I can't remember what step 2 was, if we were supposedly attacking Italy. I just don't recall from right now what the conversation was.
So when this move went through, were you like, oh, okay, that's fine?
No, not at all. Not at all.
No.
I mean, it was very obvious what was going on. And so this is where, once again, Ed reaches out and says, hey, I'm going to take Norway. Nothing you can do about it. I got it. And I said, that's fine. I said, you're going to become the aggressor. So I'm going to do whatever I can. This is not like throwing the game, but I'm going to do whatever I can. I said, I'd rather work with you. I just tried to stay calm. I'd rather work with you. I'm just stating all this factually. But it's not like me being bitter about it. Just trying to calmly dissuade him. And he said, hey, let's do this then. You have convinced me. I'm going to leave you in Norway, which I didn't believe. And I can't remember what the other part of the deal. Oh, yeah, the other part of the deal was support me back into Vienna and we'll get rid of Austria. He'll be out of the game. And you'll see the next season, those are my moves. And I told him, I don't believe these are going to go through, but I have nothing else going for me this season. So I'm going to put him in. I wrote to him, if you advance the season, Wardy, I wrote to him after the next set of moves go through. Well, let me just finish the commentary and to say that I was like, there's not much I could have done to have stopped any of this. And so kind of like I felt bad with what was a gratuitous lie to Jordan. I felt this was a gratuitous one directed to myself. I guess the only thing that's true here is I probably could have, I don't know what I could have done here. There's probably something I could have done to sabotage him a little bit, but I felt it was a little bit gratuitous on his part.
I think you're right. I think you're right, Spencer. And I think that the game has borne out that you were right, because kept none of those dots.
Well,
Ed kept none of those dots. The only dots Ed kept were yours. So the only thing he accomplished was keeping you focused on the wrong area. Back up a season, Christopher. Because I was rooting for you all game, and what I hoped you were doing here, I kind of saw the I didn't expect Vienna to Galicia, Bohemia to Silesia. What I expected was Vienna supports Galicia to Budapest, Bohemia to Galicia.
Right.
And what I found myself hoping that you would do would be Galicia to Budapest, Ukraine to Galicia, because that would have gotten you 2 builds, because that would have gotten Fleet Romania popped.
Right.
Then you would have been in Budapest and either Galicia or Ukraine and Sev. Then you could have put a 3-unit attack on Romania from Sev and bounced Armenia out of Sev, picked up Budapest and rebuilt for the fleet, and you could have got 2 builds.
Yeah.
That's what
Yeah.
that's what I was really hoping you would do there.
Yeah, no, and I didn't. I think I just this whole conversation was very late in the season, and I think with my other units, I just saw that I could lose both of them, and I put in moves to protect them because the bulk of my energy was taking place over here with a conversation with Ed about being in Budapest. But he may have seen just what you did. There was too much risk on the table if he allowed me to keep that unit up there and all of that. So it's fair. I don't have hard feelings. It's just I wish that there was a way that I had been able to push back on him a little bit harder, but I just wasn't there.
I don't think there was any pushing back against Ed, because I think the single largest gear in the machine of the diplomacy of this game was the care-bearing non-aggression between Germany and France. And I don't think anybody was going to talk either one of them into doing anything other than that until, well, we're seeing it now, 1908. Mm-hmm. I don't think anyone was going to talk either of them out of that.
That was a little bit of an ulterior motive earlier when I saved him from Karthik's attack, is I hope to earn some credit with Ed, but also to further put him in the spotlight as the main threat. And I thought maybe that would be the thing I needed for France to want to work against him a little bit. But obviously that wasn't in the cards.
Yeah, so you lose Budapest and Norway then to these German moves after he tells Porkies.
Mm-hmm.
What I thought was particularly painful here was the retreat. You retreated Norway to St. Petersburg North Coast instead of retreating it off the board and building something more useful like a new army.
That's what I found.
Was that a consideration?
I was holding out hope here, Chris. I was holding out hope that this was, you see all of those French fleets up there, that this is the point France was going to start to move. And I wanted to have a fleet that could join in on that action. I think rebuilding somewhere would have bought me just a little bit of time, but I don't think it would have bought me much time. So it was just a way to try to be a janissary for France and hang on to what I could. I'm not saying it was the right move. It's just that's what was going on.
That's fair. Because because retreating off the board and building an army, that is an admission that you've built your last build and you're just trying to survive on the stalemate line in Warsaw, Moscow at the end of the game. That was, retreating that off the board and building an army was resigning yourself to being a player on the stalemate line. And you didn't want to do that. And that's respectable. I can respect that.
It's seeing the Western moves and must have been a cause of frustration then, the gifting back of Belgium from France to Germany.
Yeah, seeing the moves and just the conversations with Greg, it was just further solidifying what you all were picking up on, which was that there was not going to be any conflict between these two anytime soon.
Game year, which is 1905, and you do finally get a bit of love from Matt in Italy.
Yes. He claims he wanted to keep me around because the fleet was useful against Turkey. I think that I correctly agreed with him and made the case that for him to keep Turkey at bay, he needed to keep that fleet handy. But my big, maybe more than one, but one of my big mistakes here, and I just kept waffling on it, was not ordering Warsaw to Silesia. This sequence of moves from Germany was very much on my radar as something that he may try, and it would have saved me for one more season. But I thought maybe he was gonna, game theory here, like he was gonna guess that was my attempt, and I just went with a real conservative hold on Warsaw. But yeah, this was just a way. I knew that if John wanted to go into Sevastopol, he wanted to be there with his army, and so this was the sequence of moves that allowed me to keep both of those units.
This was quite nice to see when this set of moves happened in the in the east.
And there was nothing I could do up in St. Petersburg. It's just, that was a desperate attempt just in case. You know, I don't know what it would have helped, but that fleet had nothing else to do.
Yeah, I think in that situation, I would have reached out to France and I'd have told him, I'm not going to bounce Norway. You should try and walk into North.
That's that. There you go. Yeah. Oh, no. Oh, I see what you're saying. So, gosh, I got to remember. We did that the next season, didn't we?
Let's look.
That's the
But
destroy.
he doesn't actually walk into North. But yeah, North is.
He could have walked into North. He put 3 units on. Well, I guess he needed to put 3 units on Belgium. He needed to put 3 units on Belgium because North Sea and War could have kept him out of Belgium if he hadn't. Okay.
This was intentionally done, though, because Greg and I had been having those conversations, and he kept declining the North Sea. Eric, he just said he has no use to be there right now. His attention is focused on Belgium, and so I did offer it both seasons. I offered it again this time, and you can see that I allowed it because I could have bounced him in Norway, and that was the attempt, was to give Greg the North Sea.
Right. Yeah, you couldn't overcome that non-aggression pact. That's all that happened there. That was outside your control, man.
Yeah, and that's you just got to admit that. I mean, it's
and with everything that was going on diplomatically with the rest of the board and John's fixation with you, and I said it all game, you never had a chance.
I don't think so. But I'm gonna. That's not 100. I can't just blame it on everybody else. Part of the problem, and I always go back to this, is did I fall short in my diplomacy? Because and I did. That's what I'm saying. So it's easy for me to blame it on John. John and I, we still text. You know, he's careful with what he tells me, but because he works during the day, so my communication with him was through text. We've talked on the phone a couple of times. I think we ended the game on a good note. I feel like I have a good relationship with all these players, like outside of the game right now, but I don't feel I did the job I needed to. And that's on me. I can't blame that on John. I can't blame it on Italy's hesitancy. I can't blame it on the Care Bear between those two. That's totally on me.
Your relationship with John is so good, in fact, that you decided to pull Army Galicia and not Fleet Romania.
I was arguing to keep that army. And at this point, I was throwing myself to Italy. Use me as you will. And he insisted that he wanted the army in Moscow. And at this point, everything you see from this point, well, at least this season, is totally Italy making the move, because I'm just trying to do anything I can to win his loyalty, that maybe my fleet stays around. And I thought Galicia. Yeah, I thought Galicia was the one to keep, but
I did see the chat on Discord about this fleet. You said something like, "Oh, is it bad of me to try and keep that fleet around for as long as possible to annoy John?"
Well, yeah.
To be clear, I don't think it matters. Right?
It was his big white whale. I wanted to keep it as long as I could. Even John was joking about it. He's like, I've just become sort of attached to that fleet now. Obviously, Italy was the one who decided it was going to go.
Yeah, I don't blame you. At that point, it didn't matter.
Yeah.
At that point, it didn't matter.
So is this Italy not taking you up on your offer then? This is just him eating your dog?
Yeah, this is where he took Romania. I didn't quite hear you there, Chris, but Germany is promising me at this point he wants to keep me around to attack Turkey. Turkey is trying to make a deal with me here as well. I think going into next season, actually. Italy asked for me next season to hit Ukraine, and I decided to do it because, shoot, none of them had been loyal to me, but if I owe anything to anyone, Italy has been the least aggressive overall. So I hit
Ukraine support Armenia to Sev isn't very much, let's go get Turkey, Russia.
Right, no, definitely not. But it's odd that I guess he didn't dislodge me the previous season. I'm not sure what I would have done with that rogue army. I don't know why he preserved me for one season. But this is where they were both saying, hey, we have a use for you. I didn't believe either of them, and I attacked Ukraine just to try to help try to help Italy.
Back up one, Chris.
Yeah.
I think this was a mistake. I think that if Ed had supported you and Sev right here at this point and told you, yeah, I'm taking Moscow, you'd have been okay with that.
That's, I think, what was going on. I think that's why that's my move.
And he very possibly would have kept Budapest and Vienna and had a shot at Romania.
Yeah,
even though those units are way, way, way over the stalemate line and should be Italian.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's my move. I think that's what we discussed.
I think that he could have potentially had the shot at keeping those dots if he'd supported you in.
Right.
I think that not cutting you in on that was probably just as bad a move as it was for him to not prop Jordan up against Greg in Edinburgh and Liverpool.
But this is what I guess I get, and I like Ed a lot, but there was no need for him to, unless he changed his mind last minute, which might have been the case, there was no need for him to tell me anything other than what happened was going to happen. Because me moving to Sevastopol, like there was no need to trick me into that. So my hope is he wasn't trying to just trick me for the sake of it. That last minute he changed his mind. I don't know, because that's what I mean by the gratuitous dishonesty.
Gratuitous lying that achieves no goals.
Totally.
It's my, yeah, no, that's usually when I swear at people and insult them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The whole game. That's the whole game with you, sir.
Yeah.
Nothing
Are you
but
talking to me, or you're saying he's lying and insulting me?
No, that's Eric's modus operandi.
Yeah.
Nothing but love for you, Wardy.
Yeah.
And yeah, sadly, this was where it ended. I mean, you did your thing for Italy, tapping Ukraine, but which, as it happened, wasn't required in the end. But this was where the story came to an end, very sadly.
It did.
You didn't even input a retreat into Livonia.
No, that would be desperation. It's funny, and I guess when I talk about my disappointment with Ed's style in this game, and it's not me attacking his character. Several players told me that he was an ally player, which he proved to be, just not with me, but with friends, and that he rarely is dishonest. And I've never played with him before. So I think there was a little bit in those earlier seasons of me banking on that when I did him this solid favor, is maybe I'm the person he links with. So
well, I will say this, Spencer. I think that if he'd worked things differently with you, he could be in a better position now than what he currently is. Because if you look at where he was when your game ended, he had 5 armies dedicated to your half of the board on the other side of the stalemate line. And he basically wasted them because he kept none of it. So, and if even one of those 5 armies had been a fleet instead, he would have had the advantage over Greg.
Here's the thing. I get a victory out of this game because I told all 4 of the remaining players they need me if they're going to win the game, if they're going to get a board top. So all but one of them, I was telling the truth to. So it's like I get to tell 3 players, I told you so. So it's a victory for me.
So you get 2 Pyrrhic victories.
Yes, 2 of them.
Okay, let's have a look at some of your depictions in the game, and let's see how accurate or unfair or funny they are. So Lady Razor, this was at the start of the game. Lady Razor depicted you as this sort of father figure of Greg, and in this instance, getting him to kick England.
You know, what's interesting is I tried to evoke that version of myself from years ago, and I was going to play a very aggressive game if I can get out of that tough early game. And you saw that with what I did with Austria, and then the counter with helping with Germany. I was going to make some bold moves, which I didn't make at all in my semifinal game. Semifinal was a very quiet game, very similar to what France played, I think, through this game. Is just wait for the opportunity. So I made a couple of moves like that, but it was going to be my style because I was hoping people were anticipating I would play like I did in the semis.
You smoke a
Now
pipe?
let's ask the single most important question about that piece of art, Spencer.
Okay,
Don't those look like Hitler eyes?
they do. They totally do. Yeah, that's why he's so good at dominating, right?
And
This is where I get fisted by Turkey.
He looks so pleased with himself as well.
Yeah.
I think based on what you said earlier, I think that in your mind, that fist is shown going into the wrong place.
Yeah.
You were sitting rather uncomfortably after that. This was a couple of Max's masterpieces.
That's right.
I am John, and I eat dog poop and lie to people, and stupid moves sleep on couch now. How do we know? First of all, did you sleep on the couch?
I don't think my wife could care less about diplomacy. So I think if anything, she's happy that I got eliminated because I'm not sitting and looking at a map anymore.
Let's ask the most important question, Spencer. Max is a real human being and is a male child.
Yeah, actually, before we went live and you weren't here yet, I pulled him into the camera. Yeah, Max is my youngest. He's a 7-year-old. He didn't draw these, but he drew one of the later ones. So
call him on over and bring him on screen. We literally have tens of viewers who are just dying to meet him.
Well, I think he's outside playing, but Bryce, if you can go get Max, I'll bring him in. Yeah.
He's got a lot of fans.
Yeah.
This is you as one of the ghoulies trying to lure innocent Ed into an FG.
Yeah.
I don't think this really stood the test of time.
No.
Yeah, I don't know if I saw myself just one of just as having signed anything with France at that point. We were hoping for a later partnership, but I can see, I guess, how it would look that way from the outside.
Here we a couple of more of these. Everyone get Austria. Which one is you in this? This.
I'm not the one with the dog poop. That's obviously okay. John.
Okay.
I'm probably the one right next to John there, and I obviously I know that we say "Good Day, Mate" in Australia rather, but we had just watched Dumb and Dumber recently.
Oh, out the window. Good night.
Yeah. so yeah.
My favorite part of that piece of art. One, it's the dropped crystal ball laying there cracked on the floor. But after that, John Yum dog poop. That was
all John can think about. Here's Max, who actually did draw the bottom one, didn't you?
Yeah. Don't worry, kids. He will swim to the ocean and be with his friends. This is beautiful.
Right, see you later.
Max. Hey, Max.
Nice to meet you. He's gone. He's off.
Yeah.
Tell us through your.
I was going to tell Max he's got a lot of people on the internet who think he's really cool.
Yeah. Everybody likes your drawings.
Max, a lot of people on the internet think you're really cool, buddy.
Thank you.
You're welcome, pal. You got a cool dad.
Say Max.
He didn't care. He just wanted to go back outside and play.
Yeah.
There's a scary man on the screen. This is the same scene as that top one, but slightly different angle. This you're firing Turkey at Austria in this instance.
That's a pictorial representation of the convoy back to Bulgaria. That's what that
is. Yes.
Seems so.
Yeah. And my response to that picture of Karthik.
Yeah. There you go, the caricature MV. Here's a callback if ever there was one. Now it's Ed looking very proud.
Very accurate. We agreed to the exchange, and he doubled down.
Sunset Boulevard,
and that was the that was the last of the artwork before you left us. So I'd like to get, before we finish, just your thoughts on each of the players in turn.
Sure.
If I may. Let's. I know we talked a lot about John, so let's get him out of the way first. What do you think about John in a nutshell?
As a person, John and I have had a lot of really nice conversations. I like him as a person. I don't know. It's easy to be frustrated with his fixation on me. I do believe there are times that John was sincere in wanting to work with me, but I think that he was pushing the ante too high when it all had to be at my risk. And I do think that there are times, and John would agree, where his moves were hostile toward me because he felt he had a really good agreement worked out with Austria or with Italy, and that's fair too. That's a really good reason to make someone's life rough. And I think I was overconfident in how much people would need me in the South to influence the North, as you said, and in the North to influence the South. As you said, Russia doesn't maybe play that role as much as once upon a time. And so I think John was just doing what he thought was best, given what he felt he had agreed to with the other countries.
Now, help me settle a bet with myself, Spencer. Other than convoying Armenia to Bulgaria, what do you think was John's best move in this entire game up until the point you got eliminated? If you were going to point us up and say, yeah, that was a good move, he did that well. Other than the convoy to Bulgaria, because that was your idea and that was all you're doing, anything John did that was good?
Well, I mean, I think his season one move. We made that agreement, and I think John's only short-sightedness there was, I don't think that he had the diplomatic control of Germany that he thought he did, and the diplomatic partnership with Austria. So John might have been running into the same thing I was, which is not having formed the bond with people that he had hoped, which is a real thing because he works during the day. The only way to talk to John until like 8 o'clock my time, PM, is to text him while he's busy doing stuff. So that probably hurt his game. But I thought that was a great move. If he wanted to take me down, he should have been in the Black Sea, but he didn't have the allies he needed to make that happen.
Sticking in the East, how about Karthik?
Karthik, I think Karthik is so likable as a player, which is the strategy I try to build for myself. I think he's very clever and people know it. And that's one big threat from Karthik, but he's super likable as a player. And so you just want to ally with Karthik. And that's a dangerous thing if you're the person who's not allied with him, is that it's easy for him to find friends.
Matt.
Yeah, I like Matt a lot. He and I spent a lot of time talking. He gave the suggestion that he was being hesitant to do what we had agreed to. And I think it's just because he had different deals in the works. I was really, in my head, critical of his play early on, as I think you guys were as well, that he just wasn't making any momentum. And now I'm learning that Matt is that type of player. He likes Italy because he's just kind of like that spider that sort of hides hidden in the sand until he's ready to pounce out. And he'll have all the patience in the world until it's his time. He doesn't have to act aggressively. So very smart player. Just shouldn't have destroyed my fleet.
Moving into the West, Jordan.
Jordan, he says we've only played once. I think we played twice. Jordan is a strong player and a super likable diplomat. I mean, conversations with Jordan are fun, but I didn't see either of those at 100% this game. And I think Jordan was just, as I was at times, busy with real life. So I don't feel like I really played against Jordan in this game. I think he was there, but he wasn't there. I do think he's right. I think he is correct when he suggests that there was a little bit of targeting of him. But I don't know that was unfair targeting. I think he was just the odd person out in that little triangle in the West.
Don't you think that with his very, very aggressive open to English Channel and Wales, he kind of targeted himself?
Yeah, I think so. And I don't know. I don't know if I totally agree, Eric, with your analysis that it was kind of a fool's move for him to attempt that convoy to Brest. It seems like it intuitively, but I think that he was assuming that Greg was thinking the same way you were. And I think because Greg often brags, here's commentary on, he often brags that he's a weak player when he plays against newbies because they're so unpredictable. But he feels very confident that he can outthink the smart players on the board. So I think Jordan was trying to outguess him and say, Greg is going to bounce me if I go to Picardy, right? He's going to bounce me there. So I'm going to be bold and go for Brest. Then he did it again because he's thinking, there's no way Greg would expect me to go for it twice. So I don't blame Jordan for those moves. I see
we tried to do a cool little bit when we covered that season in our commentary. We tried to show the video of the poison scene from The Princess Bride.
Yeah.
Not the poison in front of me. That whole guessing game, that whole downward spiral.
That's what he was doing.
That's what happened there. That's exactly what happened there. But
yeah, I don't think that was foolish.
Well, I don't think that the guess for Brest was necessarily that foolish.
But the opening move.
I do think that opening the English Channel in Wales, that guaranteed that he couldn't possibly be allies with France, and it really left him exposed to Ed. Yeah. And I think that worked to your detriment because that's why Ed got to treat you the way he did, because he didn't need you for anything.
Right, he didn't. Yeah. So yeah.
Since you mentioned Greg in your last spiel, what do you make of him? I know you played with him numerous times in the past.
Yeah, I mean, Greg is Greg. He can be a very clever and aggressive player when he needs to, but he's a smart enough player to realize there's not a single country on that board other than Jordan pestering him who's a serious threat. So he just sits there and he works out friendly little deals with Germany and just grows in a way that doesn't turn a conflict in his direction. And that's something that Greg's very good at. He's just a friendly guy who doesn't have to turn on the aggression if he doesn't need to. He will save that for as long as he needs to. And that's what he did in this game.
And you're not his dad.
Yeah, absolutely. I may have missed you there, Chris.
You're not his dad.
No, he's older than I am. So I think Greg's 62, maybe. No, he's about a half a year older than I am.
And Ed.
Well, Ed, again, likable guy. As a player, I will say I had disappointment that he's not who I thought he was. And I want to be clear with that. I'm not saying I'm disappointed in him as a person or player in general. I guess it's just that I was disappointed that I believed rumor mill or commentary from others as to who he was as a player, and that's not who he is. And so I banked on something I should not have put my chips on.
And, we've covered
I don't
6
know that
players.
I had a choice. But what's that?
We've covered 6 of the 7 players. A thought on Spencer?
Yeah, I think I've given that commentary there. I think that I was sloppy with tactical stuff at various points in the game. And those were probably the points where I was getting disengaged with the game. And it is easy to get disengaged when real life is ramping up as it was for me. And you're not necessarily doing stellar. It's easy to kind of phone it in. And there's times when I did it. I don't feel like me as a player in this game diplomatically was anything at the level of what it was in the semis. And maybe I just was phoning it in. Maybe it was just a lack of time. Maybe it was a lack of response. But Matt and I were chatting about this when I was about ready to be eliminated. And I said, I formed a really good relationship with Pez in the last one, and other players as well. But he made the comment afterward, we formed a good friendship. We chatted a ton. And in this game, the press did not take my life away. It was a little bit every day, but that was, I think, an early warning sign to me that things were going to go south, because if other players were not investing time in me, they either were not seeing me as a threat because they'd worked out some other things, or they were just doing as much as they could to appease me until that stab came. So I think early on, the lack of diplomatic engagement told me I was in trouble. But I
know that feeling, Spencer. I call that every single game I play.
But I kept hoping it would turn around, and it didn't. So, yeah.
Any final thoughts before we let you go?
No, except I'm looking forward to the next season. I know that I automatically qualify for the semis, but I'm kind of thinking I'm gonna slum it a little bit and start out in the regular games and work my way through. It has been a big break for me in diplomacy until I got into it a few months ago, and I'm kind of enjoying rediscovering that part of myself, and it's a really nice distraction. So my goal is kind of like, they never made the third installment they should have in the series Major League. I don't know over in England if you've ever seen the Charlie Sheen movie Major League, right? But you've seen it, Lex, haven't you, Eric?
Oh yeah, I love it. Didn't you see the episode where I wore my Wild Thing glasses?
No, I didn't see that. But the original, what did they win? They won like their I don't know if the word district, their division championship, right? Then they won the playoffs in the next movie. That third movie should have been them going in and winning the World Series, right? So I just made it to the semifinals the last tournament. I made it to the finals this tournament. So I'm happy with my progress. Next season is the one to take it all the way.
Ever the optimist. Ever the optimist. Sure. So one important question. Let's put it all on the line. Let's call your shot. Who's going to win this game?
I think France. Is, yeah, and he deserves it. He's done a good job, and he's the kind of player who can pull off 2 in a row, and he's shown it. Everybody should have attacked him if they were worried about that, but he's so strong of a diplomat. I think he's going to do just fine.
Yeah.
All right.
There you go, on the line. Spencer, Tarsier, thank you very much for your time to talk diplomacy with us. I know you've got a busy schedule at the moment, even without the diplomacy. So really appreciate this great insight into what was going on from your angle during the game. It's been really interesting to sit down and have this chat with you.
Spencer, doing this commentary, the fact that it brought to me the opportunity to make your acquaintance has been one of the more satisfying parts of this experience for me. I'm really glad to have gotten to know you, and I appreciate that.
Sentiments are the same on this, and it's one of the best parts of this game is meeting people you wouldn't have otherwise, and it's just a great community.
I didn't say people, I said you.
I appreciate that, but
don't feel you have to validate him, okay?
Likewise, Eric and Chris. Thank you so much for all the time you guys put into making this a fun experience.
All right.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Cheers.
All right, guys. Take care.
Thank you.